I welcome all of you to the next session of discussion, that is computer threats. As you know, I am Annapurna P. Patil from Department of Computer Science and Engineering, MS Rama Institute of Technology, Bangalore. You will have to mail me some queries on to annapurnap2@msret.edu or annapurnap2@yahoo.com. I think last session I handled the sessions on input-output devices. In any case, I have not got any queries from you people. You can always go ahead and give me queries on annapurnap2@msret.edu or at yahoo.com, right? I think in the last class we were very clear with concepts on what are input devices, what are output devices, what do you mean by storage units. There were different types of storages like the primary storage, the secondary storage. We also went through sessions on random access memory and read-only memory, which are called as RAM and ROM. I spoke about secondary storage units, which were talking about hard disk as well as the floppy disk, the DVDs and so on. In the immediate last session, I spoke about various output as well as the input devices. I think in those sessions, I also gave you an example of what do you mean by joystick, your input device like standard keyboard, the mouse. We also spoke about various printers, plotters and so on. In all these cases, if you people have certain queries, you can always mail back to me and clarify your doubts. In today's session, we will talk about computer threats. The meaning of threats is what is that which is breaking off the security of all these computations. All these previous classes, we are very clear that there are a lot of benefits of computers. We can do heavy computations, which human beings cannot do it at a given time. In all these cases, after having these benefits, we also have threats to our machines, that is, from which we should be aware or we should protect our systems. That is the discussion of today's topic. We will talk about the introduction, what do you mean by threat. In this, we will talk about viruses, bombs as well as worms. Do not take the literal meaning of what do you mean by bomb. We will be talking the meaning of viruses, bombs as well as worms in the computer terminology. It only indicates that there is a threat to the machine and we will have to protect it. There are types of viruses, right? The characteristics of viruses, categories of viruses and how we can protect it by discussing the computer security of the computer. In the computer security, we will talk about antivirus software as well as the password and the firewalls. In the beginning, human beings created the virus and it was bad. This is something which I have taken down from the internet. It is an introduction to what do you mean by a threat or computer virus. And the first computer virus came way back in 1986. It is written on the slide which you can observe. It is called as the brain virus. This is the first widely spread IBM compatible virus. This is commonly mistaken for the first virus. In any case, the Apple virus 1 in 1981, the boot sector infecting virus was also available, possibly created for pirated games. Then we had in 1975 another type of virus which is called as animal, and this copied to other users' home directories when run. Right? Today we will just see what could happen if a virus is attacked to your system. Okay. A virus is a program that attaches itself to some form of host such as legitimate executable program. Idra artha, all of us would have thought that there is nothing wrong with the machine because we are trying to use some licensed version or some legal version of the copies which we have. Now we will get CDs which are C++ compilers, C compilers, or we will have CDs which are games. All these we will think that they are legitimate. They are executable programs which are to completion and from whom we do not have any fright or which we are not expecting that things will go wrong. But because in today's world all our machines are connected to the internet, there are all chances that we are prone to virus attack. Basically, what are these viruses? There is some program which is running onto our machine. This program gets disturbed or the contents of the computer get disturbed. All the previous classes, all of us have been very clear with the idea, what do you mean by bootstrap, booting of a system. We learned this in an introduction to the memory devices, where I spoke about random access memory and read-only memory, where basically I told ROM is a component which is non-volatile, that is, which does not erase, or whose contents do not go away once the power is off. What are the types of programs in this ROM? They are booting programs, somewhere where the hardware, the software, other devices which are attached to my machine are detected during the startup of the computer. When we are trying to start the machine, there are certain softwares which have to be activated. This is formulating our booting process. So the bootstrap which is available to us, which is enabling us to start up the machine, can also get infected. Virus lives within the program which is said to be infected. Execution of the host program implies execution of the virus. Host is what we are thinking that we are hosting a particular program. For example, a person who is trying to give a party. This is a person who is trying to give something to the other community. This is MSRIT. MSRIT becomes the host. It is trying to provide something to the others. Now the person who is coming to the MSRIT is supposed to be the guest. So what is this host programs are? Something which are running onto the system. This can be the host. Now we are assuming that everything is fine with the host program, but what happens is the virus comes and sits inside the host program only, and then you are not aware of something which is happening at MSRIT or at the host program which is trying to pose a particular, or which is trying to solve a particular task. Host, somebody who is conducting it, somebody who is actually doing the task. Guest is somebody who is coming from outside. Something like person who is hosting the party is called as a host, somebody who is coming to attend the party is called as a guest. So a virus can attack the host program, that is the actual program which is doing the work, may or may not damage the infected program. A virus is able to replicate artha multiples. Replication of this particular say chalk piece what I am holding. Now you can see these two are of same form. You have a same copy, a replica of the first one. This is the first one, this is the second one. Both are exactly same, that is replica. Now a virus is able to replicate, it is able to produce more and more types of its same type. So it is able to replicate and produce itself, creates copies of itself. That is something like what you are having a Xerox copy of the original content what we had. I repeat once again, virus is something which is affecting our programs or the startup programs which are in the machine, which will see that either it is completely destructed, what we are trying to do is completely destructed, or a small variations happen in what we are trying to do. So a virus is a program that attaches itself to some form of host, such as legitimate executable programs. Samanyavagi virus ಅಂದರೆ something like common cold. This is a virus which is affecting when the climate changes. So what happens? You are affected by that virus, the virus keeps on replicating in your body, and you are prone to have a very severe cold which will create fever and so on. That is exactly what is copied into the terms what do you mean by virus in computer terminologies. I repeat, what is happening in natural world with viruses is also happening to the computers. That is, the computers also get infected by some programs, and these programs are termed as virus. The whole objective of today's session is to talk about what are the various types of viruses available and how we can get out of it. Now, what happens if a common cold is there? You take some medicines which are killing this common cold and see that you come out of the common cold. In the similar fashion, if I am having an antivirus software, what I have written on the board here, computer security, what I have an antivirus software, or if I can able to protect my system using a password or a firewall, I am able to come out of this virus attack which is to my system. Next slide. I hope all of you have a clear understanding of what is virus now. These viruses needs to have some form of distribution, such as via disk or a computer network. I was very clear in the first session as I began that it requires a host host somebody who is trying to run the program. I give an example of somebody hosting a party. So somebody must be available for it to spread. Who is this somebody? It is a machine which the virus is attacking, and it needs to have some form of distribution. Form of distribution is something which is allowing us to spread. Okay. So what happens when you have a common cold? How does it spread? If you are talking to a person who also has a common cold at home or at places of work, you are prone to get that common cold. Similarly, how does a computer virus distribute itself is when you are using a disk which is infected, or when you are in a network, whether it is an intranet or it is an internet. These are forms of distributing this virus. That is, virus use these ways in order to spread among the computer networks which are available to us. Some other virus examples which has been given here on the screen, you can read it. There are a lot of other examples which are on the internet. You can always go ahead and visit my website, or you can go through certain internet websites which are talking on various other viruses which are available. This is just an example which I have written on the screen. Now, the classification of virus is also the categories. Classifying is you are trying to categorize as which are the different types of viruses. Something like you want to categorize things on the color. You are telling all the things which are red in color are one category. All the things which are blue in color are different categories, and so on. In the similar fashion, depending on certain characteristics of the virus, you have the boot sector virus, the terminate and stay resident virus, the multi-parasite virus, the macro virus, the companion virus, and the polymorphic virus. You need not specifically talk about each one of them in particular, but I will explain some of them in particular and tell you what are the variations of them. But do understand that on a whole, all of these are causing certain harm to the machine. Either they are bringing down the speed of the machine, or they are performing a different task which the user is not wanting to perform. For example, I want to open up a file, but it is not allowing me to open a file, it is doing some other task. I want to save the file, it is telling that the saving environment is full and it is not allowing me to save the file. Something like this can be some characteristics of these viruses. I repeat once again, classifying virus is depending on the categories available to us. They are boot sector virus, it can be terminate and stay resident virus, multi-parasite virus, macro virus, companion virus, and polymorphic virus. Our next task is to just see each one of them in particular. Coming to the boot sector virus. This infects the boot sector on a disk, replaces the original boot sector with itself, stores the original boot sector somewhere else, or replaces it totally. I repeat once again, boot sector on disk. This is something where the task of booting your machine is taking place. It is initiating all the initial software which are to be installed into the machine in order to see that my machine works properly, whether it is detecting the hardware which is attached to the machine, or loading some operating system, or opening up some tools, and so on. Now, boot sector virus is one which will actually harm the boot sector which is on the disk. Now, if you can concentrate on the board, we can have a boot sector which is loaded onto my hard disk. This could be my boot sector which is needed in order to run my computer. So, the whole boot sector, if this is a software which is having a start point here and the end point here, if the virus attacks this boot sector, the entire boot sector is replaced to some other area. Some other area is the logical distinction which we have where the software is loaded in order to run the system. Virus takes control when the system is booted. That is, when the system gets started up, the virus will start working, right, from the diskette, that is the floppy or the disk drives, whatever we are trying to use, may infect other diskettes that are inserted unless they are write protected, may also infect the hard disk. So, if the pen drive, if the hard disk which we are using, the floppy disk which we are using is used in a computer which is attached to an internet or which is attached to some other network and it is infected, the same floppy, the same hard disk, if you bring and load it onto the present system in which I am trying to stand, that is also prone to get infected with the virus. Again, come back to our original example where we are trying to have or say trying to imagine a person who is having cold, or say chicken pox virus or something like that. Now what could happen, that person is roaming about somewhere, if he comes to your residence or your house, you are prone to get infected with that particular virus. It is exactly like that. The disk is infected with virus, you are trying to port the disk to a new machine, that machine gets infected with the virus. Now in this particular figure you can see the master boot record or the boot sector virus, what could happen. So this is a normal basic hard disk layout which is there. You have the file allocation table, you have the root directory, you can see it here on the screen. There is something in blue, the block is called the directory or the root directory or the FAT, which is the file accessing table, and you have the data area which is this one, okay. And then if you see the second figure, you have a viral code, this is in red, can you see it here, this is the viral code which is available to us. So this could be a basic hard disk layout which is talking about the boot record, master boot record. MBR is the master boot record which is available. Basically the layout could be something like the figure 1 where my cursor is moving, but once it is infected you can have something which is changed, you can see a red viral code which is there. Do you imagine that this could be a sequence of program which is available to us, and that program gets infected with a short program which could be a virus code inside my original program or the host program. The next slide. You also have something like the terminate and stay resident virus, which is also called as TSR virus. Here the virus is staying active in memory after the application has terminated, or bootstrapping or disk mounting has terminated. The TSR viruses can be boot sector infectors or executable infectors. Now what is this? I think again we got two terminologies here, I will just show it on the board. Now seeing the categories, the first category we discussed was the bootstrap virus, the second one we are talking about is the TSR, which is called as the terminate and stay viruses, or terminate and stay resident. See, I am repeating, TSR, terminate and stay resident virus. Now what can this do? Either it can infect the bootstrap which was available to us, which is allowing us to load my computer, or it can affect the executables, which is the exe code. Now what is this exe code? Something like you have a C program which is .c extension, I have file1.c. Now you are trying to run this C program, you will always get after running to completion as file.exe, file1.exe. File1.c is the source code which is available to us, and once this source code is run to completion, you get the exe code. So what is this TSR virus? It is also a form of virus, either it can infect a bootstrap or it can infect the .exe. Again I come back, the common cold can infect you having a sore throat, you may start coughing, or you can have a pouring nose, or you can have fever. So what are these three things? They are categories in which the virus is attacking. Similarly, the TSR virus can be a bootstrap virus, or it can affect my .exe files. Bootstrap is some startup programs which get affected, and once the startup program is finished, the virus can be terminated, or it can be killed, or it can stay even though the application is terminated. That is, bootstrap work is over, but still the virus is resident into the machine. Now TSR viruses can be boot sector infectors or executable infectors. The brain virus is a TSR virus. Now what is this brain virus? You can go back to the slide. First example I gave, that is the brain virus which came in 1986. This is the first widely spread IBM compatible virus. This was just a know-how, right? We had a say history which told that this is the type of virus which basically came in 1986 and 1981, right? So TSR virus is one of the say brain virus which is available to us, or which was available to us earlier. I repeat once again, bootstrap virus is one category of virus which is affecting my booting process. The TSR virus is also termed as terminate and stay resident, that is, it will stay even though the application has been finished. That is why I have given here, it stays in memory after the application has terminated. Terminated meaning it is finished, or TSR virus can be boot sectors or executable infectors, and the brain virus is an example of TSR virus. The next category, the multipartite virus is a virus that can infect either boot sector or executables. Again, it is of the same form. Such a virus typically has two parts, one for each type. When it infects an executable, it acts as an executable infector, or when it infects the bootstrap, it works as boot sector infector. Multi, that is, it is acting as both. Okay, I repeat once again, TSR can be either one of them, can be a boot sector virus or it can be an executable infector, whereas when I come to the multipartite, it is acting as both. So once it executes or it infects the executable, it becomes an executable infector, or once it infects the boot sector, it becomes a boot sector infector. I give an example of the common cold once again. Either you can get a sore throat, or you can get a pouring nose, or you can get a fever. In any case, if you get all of them, it is multiple. So multiple infection of the virus can bring you down with a cold, cough, and also the fever. I repeat, you can go ahead and imagine the computer virus, something which disturbs the normal flow, that which happens to human beings. The same example can be quoted. Virus is one which affects the normal flow, either for a bootstrap virus or something which executes or which stops the execution of the normal program. The next categories, these are all categories, there can be n number of these. Basically what categories I have put on is in literature. It can be the boot sector, the TSR, the multipartite, it can be the macro, the companion, or the polymorphic. I have given the slide already. The slide with the introduction of categories gives a listing of all these which are available to us. A macro virus is a virus composed of sequence of instructions that is interpreted rather than executed directly. Macro viruses can infect either executables or data files, and duffless shell virus can execute on any system that can interpret the instructions. This is basically one type of virus which is composed of a sequence of instructions that is interpreted rather than executed directly. So you don't have a whole code or a code as a full which is infected by this virus, but this virus is composed of a sequence of instructions, that is one dadmele innondu. Sequence in the sense after one the next one, after two the next three, four, and so on, right. Now this macro can also be imagined as an interpreter, which we have just heard of in C language, which is a substitution to a series of lines of code. Okay, so macros is something like the whole code gets interpreted wherever we are trying to program it. The next few lines on macro: piece of self-replicating code written in an application macro language. A macro virus requires an auto-executive macro, one which is executed in response to some event. Right, event, it is an action. Right, it can also be a series of say interruptions we have, or it can be a series of events which we have when we are talking about the macro attack. Opening or closing a file or starting an application, all this is an event. Opening a file, closing a file, saving a file, these are events. They are also called as actions, right. Each one is an event of itself, right. Once the macro virus is running, it can copy itself to other documents, delete files, and so on. Do understand, basically viruses are got to do with replication of themselves. The code is getting replicated. So what is that they do? They keep infecting the executables, or they keep infecting the bootstrap sector which is available to us, and cause some hindrance to the program which is executing. Polymorphic, artha multiple actions, right. Poly, multiple, morphic, works. A virus may be encrypted to try to distinguish itself and hide what it does. For an encrypted virus to actually run, it has to decrypt its code and data. The portion that does this is referred to as a decryptor. Now again, if you just imagine it in real world example, there is something got to do with encryption and decryption, which is actually trying to hide the code, or it is trying to protect the inner code which is available to us, which is called as encryption. But the other side, when the outer link is removed from the particular code, that could be the decryption of that particular virus, which comes out as the original virus which is available to us. Now encryption techniques can use random keys to make the virus code hard to spot. However, the decryptor itself will have a signature. Now this is a little hard to understand because the concept of encrypting and decrypting comes into figure. Again, we will use the board for this. You can just see what could happen in a polymorphic say viruses is something got to do with the file here. Now this could be a file which is having a sequence of line. The program or the virus which is infecting can be encrypted, that means it can be somewhere in some position. This can be the word which is encrypted. For example, if my original machine is 1101, what is this 1101? Just imagine that it is a message which is getting passed from one machine to other or from the receiver to the sender. Now this particular 1101 gets infected, that means the virus will say in such a way that the 1101 from the sender and the receiver will not be same. This 1101 which is at the source, which is at the sending point, this is called as a source, will go into the virus infected, and wherever a 0 is there, it has made 1. So 1111 will be the output, but this will not be the information which I am trying to look. Again one more example, I can just tell that I am trying to pass an information called as Annapurna. Now how is the virus affecting this particular string is, this Annapurna is replaced as, instead of ANNA, PURNA, it will tell POORNA. Now this becomes a wrong information because I am pronounced as PURNA, it has come as POORNA. That is, the zeros are made once or the ones are zeros. In any case, do understand that the original machine will not, or original information will not come on the other side. This could be one of the type of virus effect where whatever we have passed as a message will not come out at the destination. At the source you have given some other instruction, at the destination something else is got. So that could be one type of infection with the viruses. A polymorphic virus is randomly encrypted virus that is also programmed to randomly vary its description routine. Now if I think that the virus has attacked 1101, it has made a 0 as 1. So if I go ahead and change this, or if I go ahead and detect that wherever a 0 is there, it is making as 1 and take protection with this, it will not work. Second time it would have made 1s as zeros. So it is randomly working. A polymorphic virus is randomly working. Either it is making 1s as zeros or it is making a 0 as 1. In any of these cases, you cannot detect this polymorphic virus only because they are haphazard. One day a cold is affecting your throat, the second day it is affecting your say skin, the third day it is affecting something else. So what happens, how many things it is affecting varies. So in that case you are not able to spot where should I catch the problem and solve it. That is spoken about in polymorphic viruses. Now that is the categories of virus. I repeat, there could be bootstrap viruses, you could have TSR viruses, you could have polymorphic viruses, right? You could have multipartite viruses. In all these cases there could be multiple actions. Do understand that in all these categories either they can affect the bootstrap, which is the initial program to be run or to be loaded from the disk, which is making your machine work fine. Either it could affect the bootstrap virus or it could affect the exe files which are available to you. Now again the viruses can be of different categories. There could be worms, the Trojan horse and bombs. I repeat again, do not take it in other side of the actual literal meaning of what do you mean by bombs. But here the worms or the Trojan horse or the bombs are just names given for an infection which could happen to the computer. Now these are virus types. If you open up your syllabus, you will, the next discussion could be on types of viruses. All that what we have seen until now is the category of viruses. Now we are talking about all these category of viruses can fall in one of these types, right? Now what is a worm? A self-replicating computer program similar to the computer virus. Unlike a virus, it is self-contained and does not need to be a part of another program to propagate itself. Virus needs a host, okay, to spread itself. It also needs a device which is a diskette or the internet or the network through which it can spread. Now a worm is self-contained. It need not be a part of some other program or some other say code. It can run as a full containment and it can also keep spreading. Often designed to exploit computers' file transmission capabilities. File transmission is something like I am sitting in a location 1 and I require file number 1, 2, 3 from MSRIT. So what I do, I just log in to that particular ID or the particular area given to me and try to get files which are in a particular server. So when we are trying to do this file transactions, most probably these computer worms come into existence. Basically understand that they are self-replicating, again they are trying to multiply. That happens with our common cold virus. They are growing in numbers, right? They simply replicate within a given span of 2 days or 3 days. In a similar fashion, the computer virus as well as worms keep replicating, right? And these are self-contained. That is one more point which is different from virus. They need not, does not need to be a part of another program to propagate itself. Something like I am trying to have a boot sector virus which is affecting the bootstrap. The code gets inserted into the bootstrap software which is running, or say the booting say tool which is running, or booting phenomena which is running, or it is trying to affect the exe code which is available. Here the worm can be a self-contained one which is affecting the file transactions. A program or algorithm that replicates itself over a computer network or through email and sometimes performs malicious something which is haphazard. Okay, it is not a normal attack. Usually when I tell file open, the file must open, but instead of opening, some garbage information could come on your screen, such as using up the computer and network resources and possibly destroying data. Something like today you finished, you saved the file as file1.c, tomorrow you come back, you are trying to open file1.c, but it is not available. Okay, so the virus has infected file1.c, even though it is existing, you are not able to open the file1.c. It is a program or the algorithm that replicates itself. Fundamentally remember that it is replication which is affecting the multiple copies of the programs to be available. What happens multiple copies of the program? Again we will use the say board for this. You have something like in the last few sessions what I had used the terminologies of the gigabytes and the megabytes which are available to my hard disk. Okay, do remember that if I tell the 100 bytes of memory is available to me, this is the content of my hard disk. For example, I am trying to take here. If the 100 bytes of memory is available to me, I can load some software onto that, say software 1, 2 and so on. Now if this 100 bytes of hard disk is affected by a virus which is 10 bytes, now this virus starts spreading. So it becomes 10 becomes 20, 20 becomes 30, 30 becomes so on, and what could happen? It could go on multiplying on my hard disk, and this capacity of 100 bytes it's lost. So what would happen to my storage unit? Because of replication of this viruses, it could affect the complete memory storage of my hard disk, and you could not get a provision for opening your files or saving your files or some other actions which are required onto categorizing your file transactions. Again you can see on this sync slide, I have also given some example of worms which are available to us. Now in addition to replication, a worm may be designed to delete files on a host system. Host, this word you must clearly understand, something which is to the computer, something who is trying to do the actual program, that is the host. Something which is coming from outside is the guest. Send documents via email, carry out other executables as a payload. Now this could be some things which the computer worms can do. They can delete your files, they can send documents via email. You are trying to send, but the worm, if it is affected, if the computer is affected by the worm, you will see something like email simply passing from your machine or from your logins, or you are trying to receive some haphazard emails onto your logins. Now another type of virus is called as a torsion. A malicious program distinguished as legitimate software cannot replicate itself, in contrast to some other types of malware like worms and viruses, but they can be contained within a worm. What has happened in the first category is a small code is there which could be 10 bytes or 200 bytes or whatever it is, that is getting replicated, or that code is getting say something like spread through the machine. But here the torsion is not replicating itself, but it goes and sits with some other worm which is available to us to spread. Again you come back to natural examples. You think as of an example of a tree which is available to us, and the weeds which are trying to use the tree to grow up. Okay, so you have shrubs and say some small trees which are taking strength of the larger trees to grow. Okay. So, worms are basically small trees which are simply running or replicating themselves, but the torzons are becoming a part of some other worms which are available and running. Legitimate software. Malicious program, the word malicious is something which is suspicious, something which is haphazard, which is not a normal flow. Depending on purpose, a torzon can be a destructive or a source hog and is almost always considered a root compression of examples of back orifice, net bus, sub-even. All these are some examples which can be jotted on the network or say on the internet, which is giving us the types of torzons. This could not be the only types. There are several types which are available to us, but I have just given certain examples which are of the type torzon. I repeat once again, now the worm was something which is trying to replicate, but a torzon cannot replicate itself in contrast to some other types of malware like worms and viruses, but they can be contained within a worm. They are sitting up as a part of some other virus which is available to us. So, what could happen? We think that there is no worm because it is becoming a part of something which is already in our machine. Okay, we are already accustomed to that. It simply comes in between those programs and sits onto your machine, and we are thinking that it is not causing any harm, but later on we will observe that it is trying to do some other harmful behavior. Can legitimate networking tools be considered torzons? Okay, legitimate networking andre legal networking tools. Many applications are installed by hackers and worms that could be considered legitimate tools. If they were not installed by you and are being used for malicious purposes, they are considered as torzons, even though your antivirus software will not detect them as such. So, something which is you are feeling is a normal flow, is doing no harm for us, could also be infected by this torzon horse, because do understand that they become a part of something. They do not have a signature of their own. Okay, so they are going in disguise. Okay, you never get a person who is putting a mask and telling that I am a robber. No, he comes in disguise. So that is the capacity of the torzon. It comes and sits as a part of the worm which is already into your machine, right? So that could affect your functioning of the machine. We also have something called as logic bomb, which is a slack code, programming code inserted designed to execute under particular circumstance. It can explode. That is what is being told in the PPT here. It can simply multiple. Okay, so that could be a logical bomb. Bomb in the sense it can simply burst. When it bursts, what would happen? Multiple copies of that. Okay, you take a stone, just throw it, it becomes small pieces. So what happens? The big stone is just bursted into smaller units. So the only wrong thing that could happen is what we thought as a whole now has multiple copies. You have many copies which are already infected by this logical bomb. Bomb in the sense exploding. So it can have multiple events of the same type. This also does not replicate. I repeat once again, the viruses and the worms were replicating, but the concept of torzon horse as well as logic bombs do not replicate. They only infect parts of your files which are executables and so on. Essentially a delayed action computer virus or a torzon horse. Okay, it is also a part of a virus which is termed as a torzon horse. I repeat once again, the logic bomb as well as the torzon horse do not replicate themselves, but they become a part of other malicious programs like the worms and the viruses. Now, what is the characteristics? You can look into the board. I finished the types of viruses which are basically categorized as the worms, the torzon horse or your bombs, logic bombs. I also gave you the categories where you have the TSR, you have the say multipartite, you have the first type which is the boot sector and so on. Now we will talk about the characteristics. So I suppose the types is clear, the categories is clear. We must talk about characteristics. Characteristics is how do you define it? Okay, what are the properties which define the viruses? So what are the properties which define a common cold? You start sneezing, you have a fever, you have a sore throat, your throat is gone, you are not able to speak. All these are symptoms or characteristics of a common cold attack to you. In the similar fashion, how do viruses work, or how do you categorize or characterize these viruses? Not the word categorize, the word characteristics. Characteristics is also called as properties. Once a virus gains access to your computer, its effect can vary. So under what circumstances do you think that you are being attacked by a virus is the next big question. Okay, the question I try to relate with having a common cold. So one of these symptoms you have, it is definitely a common cold. Similarly, one of these symptoms which are listed on my screen, please look into the screen, any of these symptoms, all these symptoms could be a characteristics or a property of a virus effect. Possible attacks include replicating itself. So your memory is gone, it goes on replicating, multiplying, and might be the space in your computer is not sufficient to store your files and so on. Interrupting system or network use. You are trying to use the network, it is telling access denied. That could also be one of the form of characteristics of virus. Modifying configuration settings. Some settings of your system have been affected. You are expecting the system to work in a fashion and it is not working like that. Flashing the BIOS, that is basic input output. Format hard disk or destroy data. Using computer or network resources. Distribution of confidential information. Okay, that could be a very hazardous effect of a virus which would simply move your important files to some other computer. Denial of service attacks. Now all these could be certain characteristics or properties of virus attacks. In any case, when you are doing a normal functioning of the computer, that is fine, you are able to use it as in a normal tendency, in a normal day, something like opening your file. Before you are opening your file, you are trying to say boot your system, it is booting within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, that is fine. But if it delays in booting, it takes half an hour to open up your machine and show your login and ID, then you are prone to imagine that it might be infected of the virus. Now these are certain say characteristics or properties of viruses. I repeat once again, look into the board. We have spoken about the types of viruses, we have spoken about the categories of viruses. All categories of viruses fall under 3 categories. Either they can be replication, or they can be host to something else, or they can be a part of some other program which is called as a worms or virus. And the third one we discussed was characteristics, which is also called as properties of viruses. That could be fine with the first 3 important points. I repeat once again, we spoke about when do you imagine a virus has been attacking your system, what are the different types, and what are the categories of viruses. The next slide is talking about typical methods of infection. Removable media or drives, downloading internet files, email attachment, unpatched software and services, poor administrative password, poor shared passwords. What are all these? They are means of getting infection. Again I repeat, what are the means of getting a common cold or chicken pox? If you are getting in touch with that person, you are breathing the same air of that person, you are sitting beside him, all these can be an infection to the common cold. Similar instances, what could be the possibilities of a virus attacking your system? ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ system ಹಾಳಾಗೋದು. That is talking about typical methods of infection. So that could be a removable media or drives. Okay, downloading internet files. I think all of us have done this downloading of files. There is some information which is available on the internet. Without having an antivirus software, we are trying to download that particular file which is in exe or which is in some extensions, and that could be one of the chances of virus infection. Email attachments, you have unpatched software and services, or you have a very poor password, something like Annapurna is my login, the password I have given is also Annapurna. So there are chances that what your name is telling as a login could also be a possibility of your password. So it is preferably very nice to have good passwords which can also prevent the virus attacks. So the next few slides we will see the computer security, which is the last unit of our discussion, which is talking about virus prevention. We are already got the common cold, how it spread we know. So the next discussion is how do you prevent it. Okay, there is something called as prevention, which is the computer security. Now patching the operating system, patching services, patching the client software, using the passwords, antivirus software as well as firewalls could be different ways of preventing the virus attacks. Now password, as discussed earlier when talking about Torsion, strong passwords are vital part of keeping your system free of infection. So give passwords in such a way that they cannot be decoded. They cannot imagine an introduction to your machine. So all positive, something like usually Annapurna is my name, a short name for that is ANNU. So they try to hack your system by using a short form of your say name or your surname or your children's name or your something like a spouse name. It could be a relation, right? So what is the logic used by a hacker is, because he is a human being, he will try to understand it as a normal terms. So he could use something like if I give a login as Annapurna, all of you know that I am from MSRIT, might be my password is MSRIT. Okay, so some related information only will be the password. So that password, if you try to keep the passwords very intelligently, you are prone to prevent yourself from virus infection, right? Antivirus software does not catch the majority of Trojans. These Trojans are typically legitimate networking tools that were never intended to be used as Trojans. Legitimate, they come with signature, that is, we think that it is all completely foolproof. We do not suspect the infection of that particular code with the Trojan code, right? Now, having strong passwords will determine most worms and scanners that attempt to crack passwords as a means of entry. Okay, what is the entire discussion on? The discussion is some malicious use of your machine. Somebody is trying to use your machine. It is simply not the virus has to simply come to your machine and stay there and die. That is not the purpose. The purpose of the attack is to slow down your machine, to transfer your files to somebody else, to open up your important documents which are related to you and send that documents to somebody else. Okay, so these could be a wrong effect. It is trying to degrade the normal functioning of your system. That is the purpose of virus. So if you do not allow the virus to infect your machine, that could be one of the prevention. How can you do that? You don't give accessibility to your machine. How can you not give accessibility to your machine? By giving good passwords. That is a reference to or the link to the entire concept. The administrator account and those users who have administrator privileges are at the greatest risk, but all users on the network should follow the same password policy. So there could be some password policies, like you could have alphanumerical instance onto your say password and so on, right? Now this is the detection. The primary method of detection of antivirus software is to check programs and files on a system for virus signatures. However, good antivirus software uses many methods to search the system for viruses. All of you sitting elsewhere could appreciate now about the antivirus software. Your machines will be loaded with this. They are just trying to detect whether the virus is onto your machine. These could be features. There could be many antivirus software depending on the cost, the frequency of the updates, ease with which you are trying to install. This is a next slide is an example of the various antivirus software we are using, right? The McAfee is something which is most popular. Okay, this is used in our labs, right? You also have various other say antivirus softwares which are listed here. Okay, so what is this? These are all antivirus software options listed onto my screen. Depending on the cost, the frequency with which it is used, you can go ahead and purchase one of them and install it onto the machines. Now the cleaning virus depends entirely on your local antivirus solution. So if your software identifies but cannot remove the virus, check the manufacturer's website for manual removal instructions. So all these antivirus software, whatever I have listed in the previous slide, also come with a check and the detection of this virus and also removal. Cleaning, detection is one task. After detection, you need to clean the virus, that is another task, right? So in any case, the software is available to both of them. Another means of performing the safety of your machine is perform basic computer safety by using the internet firewall. Update your computer, use up-to-date antivirus software. This could be the means of having virus protection. Now this is a software, firewall is a software or hardware that creates a proactive barrier between your computer and potentially damaging content on the internet or the network, right? So somebody is giving you as a gate, main gate is there for your college. What does that do? That is protecting you, protecting people entering your college. Okay, so that is the work of a firewall. It protects some external intake onto your network. Network is the internet network or internal network what you are using. So this is the use of internet firewall. Commercial hardware and software firewalls may also be used. This is a figure which is McAfee, which is a vendor. Something like you have Parle G, you have Tiger Biscuits and so on. Similarly, this is one of the company which does that. It is McAfee firewall which is available to us. Update your computer, download service packs and updates, especially important for Windows XP users. So you have virus protections, firewalls, you have automatic updates. So those could be the means of antivirus software. McAfee and another vendor which is available to us make certain to keep virus definition up to date. Up to date is something which is trying to tell that something new happens also I am able to protect it. Who is trying to do all this is the vendors which are available to us. Especially you can see on the screen which I have given, which is talking about two important vendors here which are also updating say your software onto the entire say virus, the software with the viruses which are attacked. So this was a discussion on the virus or the computer threats to a computer. I again request all of you to just mail me in case of any doubts you have. You can see on the screen I will just put my particular say email ID, which is again very important to clarify your doubts. You can go ahead and post your questions on this particular part, which is annapurnap2@msrt.edu or annapurnap2@yahoo.com. So any doubts you have or any clarifications you have with this computer threats, you can always mail me so that I can answer you back. In any case, that is the end of the session, which is talking about how do I formulate the entire sequence of talking about the threat sequence, which are categorizing my particular discussion under the types, the characteristics of viruses, categories, as well as the computer security. Repeat once again, there are n number of antivirus softwares which are available to us, which can protect your system. Basically, once the system is infected, you require somebody to protect it. That could happen with the antivirus software. And before the infection, you can protect the system by using the firewalls which are available. Especially, I gave some of the tools on McAfee, which is allowing us some updates every now and then. Updates every now and then is after every 6 months, every 3 months, there is a new release of the product which tells that you can update your machine with this antivirus software so that you can protect it. I repeat once again, the discussion is with all this, and you can always mail me as annapurnap2@msrt.edu. Thank you.